All right, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, June 11, 2019 regular business meeting of the East Bay MUD Board of Directors. I'm Lisa McIntosh, and I am sitting in for President Marguerite Young, who's running a little late. She should be here shortly. We have Director or Vice President Doug Linney and Director Katz. They're participating by phone from Canada and Germany, respectively. The Finance Administration Committee met earlier today and will report out under item 13. Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman?
Present.
Director Katz? Director Linney?
Here.
Director McIntosh?
Here.
Director Millen?
Present.
Director Patterson?
Present.
And President Young.
All right. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do have a presentation. Mr. General Manager, this presentation is the East Bay MUD Peralta Community College Cohort graduation.
Thank you. Yes. We're pleased to have the opportunity to provide this presentation today and celebrate the cohort graduation. The district has a strategic goal of creating an environment that attracts, retains, and engages a high-performing, diverse workforce in support of the district's mission. An element of that goal is to grow our own through educational support and programming. In 2017, the district and Peralta Community College District partnered on a pilot program to bring college courses to the district. Today, we're pleased to celebrate 20 district employees who have completed the inaugural college certificate program. Each of these students attended 1 to 2 nights of classes each week for the last 2 years. Their dedication to education and perseverance throughout the program are to be admired. They all work full-time, have families, and other commitments, and I'm hopeful that they will continue to pursue their formal education while drawing on the resources the district has to offer. I would like to thank everyone who helped make this program a success. Based on the success of the pilot program, the second cohort will start this fall. But this time, I'd like to invite the class valedictorian, Jason Mokelumne, to share some remarks.
My dad said I should open with a joke. I'll refrain. Good afternoon, my name is Jason Mokelumne. I'm one of the graduates from East Bay MUD's first ever cohort program. I'm especially excited to have been given this opportunity to thank some of the people that made this experience possible. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the board of directors and the general manager for making it possible to bring college to the district. We understand that it took a lot of time and hard work, including the occasional home-cooked meal, to provide us with this experience. And so I'd also like to give a heartfelt thank to our management team, Clifford Chan, Derry Moten, Heidi Benenson, and Maria Bourbano. Your commitment and support throughout the entire process was undeniable. I'd also like to thank the fine folks at the Peralta Foundation and Laney College for all the hard work and patience I suspect it took to take on such a diverse group of students. Although there are many Laney staff members and instructors to thank, we are especially grateful for Kim Glosson and Melissa McLevaney.
Yes.
These instructors truly embody the core values of the district and impart them in their lessons. Lastly, I'd like to thank my fellow classmates. This was a challenging commitment. For most of us, it had been decades since we had sat in a classroom. I watched you guys navigate the challenges of going back to school, of which there are many. You showed up tired and dirty, but you showed up. That's right. You took the time away from your families and friends. You worked nights and weekends. And when some of us struggled, you gathered together to ensure everybody's success. We became a family that I'm very proud to be a part of. For me, this moment is particularly special. To be honest, this was a commitment I was afraid to make. I wasn't sure if I was willing to give up the necessary time it would take to do well in school. Having never graduated from high school, I wasn't even sure if I was smart enough to handle the curriculum. I am very proud to say that not only did I complete the challenge, but that I graduated this program with a 4.0 grade point average. So once again, to everyone involved, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That was very compelling. And on behalf of the district, I'd like to congratulate each of you on your hard work and accomplishments, and I encourage you to continue on forward and further in education. What I'd like to do is ask our Director Patterson, who has a long-standing relationship with the Peralta Community College, to provide the certificates, and then we can all gather up and take a photograph. So with that, Heidi will work with Director Patterson, and I'll call the names. So the first to come forward is Theodore Atkinson. William Bateman. Michael Brown. Rafael Carmona. Jessica DePlazis. Nicole Douglas. Leobardo Gonzalez. Willis Hargrove. Wendy Ibarra. DeLorean Johnson. Daniel Kilker.
Thanks, sir.
Gil Laredo. Sharika Love. That was fast. Joseph Leister. Jaswan Mahabali. Jason McClooney. Shirley G. Ng. Paul Victor. Jistand Williams Jr. And Byron Wolverton. So now we'd like to ask all of the graduates to meet on the front stairs for a group photo, and there's going to be a training or a reception in the training room. For those families who came, feel free to participate in the reception as well. Thank you.
Okay. Apologies for my early distancing the opening remarks on that. Congratulations to all of you.
Yes, this is it. Let's go to the training room.
We got the way they need it.
Okay. We have no announcements from closed session. Is there anyone here for, I have one card that looks like for public forum. If there's anyone else here for public comment for items that are not on the agenda, now is the time. And we have Elizabeth Stage. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Elizabeth Stage, Vice Chair of the North Hills Community Association, an area represented by Director Young and Director Katz. And I didn't know exactly where to put this thank you, but I figured thank you is always welcome.
Absolutely.
You have an item on the consent calendar regarding emergency generators in the event of a PG&E power shutoff. And I just want to congratulate the district on the tremendous progress that has been made by the directors and staff over the last year since PG&E announced its intention to de-energize its lines to avoid fire. And first and foremost, the district is now a public safety partner for PG&E, which was something that took quite a little of effort to achieve. And so now in constant communications. My community association is really excited that you're going to increase the availability of emergency generators through this item on the consent calendar, and indeed deploy them starting in mid-July, should the full board approve, so that they'll be positioned in areas where the power shutoffs are most likely. The power shutoffs will decrease the likelihood of ignition from the PG&E equipment, but there are other sources, of course, of fire, humans being predominant in that, and we want to make sure that the water can get pumped to the high-risk areas for the purpose of fire suppression. We are gathering as residents supplies, including water, for the likely shutdowns, and we are glad that you are gathering the wherewithal to deliver water for the firefighters. So thank you so much. I really look forward to working with you and your staff about the public education and outreach that is necessary and planned. So just thank you very much on behalf of a large swath of the Oakland Hills.
Thank you very much. It's an important issue. Thank you for your diligence on it. Okay. We have our consent calendar, items 1 through 9 for consideration. Are there any items that directors wish to pull?
I'd like actually item 4 to be pulled, going to the comments that Ms. Stage was talking about. I think it's really important that the entire board hear what we're doing in this process. So I would move items 1 through 3 and 5 through 9.
Excuse me, Jack.
I mean 5. Sorry, I did.
4 or 5.
1 to 3.
I want 5.
You want 5?
1 through
Right.
4 and 6 through 9.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of approving consent? Oh, we have to do roll call, right. Madam Secretary?
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yeah.
Director Linney,
Yeah.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Millen,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
President Young.
Yes. Okay, do we have a short presentation on item 5?
We don't have a presentation queued up on the slide deck, but we would be glad. Do we have? Oh, okay. Well, we're foresightful, and so, yes. So, Brett Kawakami will provide the presentation. Thanks, Brett, for being ahead of the game.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board of Directors. I gave a presentation earlier this morning to Finance Administration Committee, and I'll present a shortened version here. So this is a presentation on public safety power shutoff. This is PG&E's program, as you're aware, to proactively de-energize their equipment under certain conditions with the intent of avoiding a wildfire. So a quick overview of my talk. First I'll just talk about PSPS, give a brief description, some of the background. Then I'll talk about how it could impact our district facilities. I'll review the preparation, steps that we've been taking over the past year, then talk about next steps that we have planned. So background, the de-energization has actually been available since around 2012, back down in San Diego with San Diego Gas and Electric. In 2018, the California Public Utilities Commission had a resolution where they expanded this authority to all the investor-owned electric utilities, including PG&E. So it laid out some basic rules for de-energization. De-energization has to be reasonable. The utilities have to provide mitigation and reporting and notification. This resolution also laid out requirements for customer notification and outreach. As Ms. Stage had mentioned, we've been over the last year involved in the rulemaking process from the CPUC governing de-energization and also their development of wildfire mitigation plans. So we've attended many meetings, provided many comment letters, and we have been recognized, in addition to other water agencies, wastewater and utilities, have status as public safety partners. So that's beyond just being a customer. This means that we get priority notifications, have more constant communications with PG and the PSPS. So we feel we've been productive, and that work will continue into the next phase. So what are the triggers for a PSPS? Well, a PSPS is most likely under what we call red flag conditions, which is generally low humidity, dry conditions, windy conditions, temperature, high temperature. The specific triggers for a PSPS would be low humidity levels below 20%, sustained winds above 25 miles an hour, and gusts in excess of 45 miles an hour. The condition of fuel on the ground is also important. Moisture content is an important parameter, and as the season goes on, the fuel dries out, so it becomes more and more, that fuel becomes more and more combustible as time goes on. So those are some of the factors. PG&E has also said that in addition to monitoring those factors, that we also have staff on the ground in real time to make observations of local conditions, and that will all feed into their decision-making process for making a PSPS, or for calling a PSPS. So once the weather conditions subside, PG&E will not turn on the power until they've had a chance to go out and patrol and inspect the lines, repair any damage, and then once all that's done, they will restore power and notify customers. They've said that process could take, the inspection process, once the weather conditions have abated, would take up to 48 hours. So if the weather conditions last, that you combine it with the duration of the weather conditions itself, that means a PSPS event from start to finish could actually last several days. So customers could be out in power for anywhere from 2 to 5 days, for instance. PG&E is making steps to try and accelerate their restoration process, but it could last, again, many days. So 2018 was the first year that PG&E considered using PSPS. In 2019, they had significantly expanded the scope of this program, as this table shows. So in 2018, PG&E was focusing on the distribution circuits in Tier 3, which is the most most extreme fire danger areas, as defined by the CPUC. They include some transmission circuits, and altogether in 2018, about 570,000 customers potentially could have been impacted by PSPS events, including us. Now in 2019, they've expanded that definition to include Tier 2, which is elevated fire risk, and Tier 3 areas, And they've increased the size of circuits, transmission circuits that could be included in the PSPS to just below 500 kilovolts. What this means essentially is that any of PG&E's 5.4 million customers could be potentially impacted by a PSPS.
I was just going to ask you how many customers PG&E had.
Right, like every single one. So if there's a transmission circuit somewhere even far away, but it runs through one of these high-risk fire areas, and they have to shut that transmission circuit down, depending on where it feeds to, you can be far away from a fire zone and still be impacted. So that's the message that PG&E is delivering right now through a number of workshops to their customers. To give you an idea how this would look for us, so there's about roughly 60 PG&E circuits in our service area that could affect our facilities. So what PG&E has provided us is a list of 200 facilities in the East Bay that could be subject to a PSPS event. This includes 4 water treatment plants, 60 distribution pumping plants, and 48 distribution reservoirs. We have 24 upcountry facilities that could also be affected. And what's important to keep in mind is that that list of 200 facilities or so are the ones that would be affected by local Tier 3 or Tier 2 outage. In other words, if they took out a transmission line far outside our region, but it affects the delivery power into our region, theoretically any district facility could be affected. So that's more open-ended. We have evaluated the impact of a multi-day outage on our local system. And one of the most significant impacts would be if we lose power to our distribution pumping plants, then the water in the reservoirs drains, and theoretically, if it's long enough, we would lose storage and we could depressurize our system, which would create public health impacts because that's our main barrier against contamination, is keeping our lines pressurized. So obviously a scenario we want to avoid. The graphic just shows some of the analysis that we did. The areas in red and orange are areas that could drain in less than 2 days, and then yellow and green is facilities that would last, the reservoirs, distribution reservoirs, pressure zones that will last anywhere from 3 to 5 days or longer. So we've done analysis and we've come up with preparations to make sure that we avoid that scenario.
Brent, it needs to be explained that we're talking essentially when we go into this mode for how much capacity we have in the reservoirs, that means essentially no outside watering.
Correct, and that's the message we're going to have for our customers. If there's a PSPS, please avoid any discretionary water use because it just leaves us more time in the reservoirs. That's a very good point. Okay, so where do we have backup power at our facilities? We have backup power currently at our water treatment plants, some of our larger critical pumping plants, this administration building and our corporation yards, and wastewater facilities. One service that could be interrupted is our ability to deliver recycled water irrigation. We do have potable water backups in many cases for that. We have a fleet of 33 portable pumps and generators that can be used in an emergency. And this is also used for planned maintenance outages as well. So you see the pictures there. There's a generator, a portable generator on the top, and then a portable pump on the bottom. Just to give you a feel for the size of it, maybe about 10 feet or so by 5 feet. They could be larger if we have larger facilities we need support, but it gives you an idea what that looks like. So like I said, in our analysis, we identified the need for additional backup generators. And what those backup generators will allow us to do is to make sure we have enough water level in the reservoirs, to maintain enough water level, sufficient water level in the reservoirs for a multi-day PSPS event. All right, with those generators and the portable pumps, combination of that emergency equipment, we plan to pre-deploy this equipment because the notification from PG&E, even though they say they will give us from 48 to 72 hours advance notice, that's uncertain. There's no guarantees on that. So we are going to pre-deploy this equipment, and this map just shows where those 30 or so pieces of equipment would go. On this map, you can see the Tier 2 and Tier 3 areas I referred to earlier. Tier 3 is red, and then Tier 2, which is the elevated. Tier 3 is the most extreme, Tier 3 is the elevated, and that's shown in sort of the tannish color. Usually up in the higher elevations are where that occurs. Okay, so last year we've also been working together with many groups in the district to plan and prepare for a PSPS. One of the things that we always do, even before the PSPS, is that whenever there's a red flag condition, we maximize our distribution reservoir storage, keep our reservoirs full whenever we have those high-risk fire conditions. We've been participating in community meetings. We presented in front of Ms. Stage's group in HCA and have been working with other groups as well. Internally, we have conducted tabletop exercises. Of course, if this event occurs, we would stand up our emergency operations team, so we've been discussing it in that avenue as well. Working with our public information staff to develop public messaging. That includes customer pipeline, social media, a webpage, fact sheets. And here's this message that, again, that we're going to let our customers know. If you have a PSPS, if you lose power for one of these events, minimize your discretionary water use, because that just allows us to keep more water in the reservoirs for longer. Finally, we reviewed our public notification plan, and this is the worst case scenario where if we did depressurize part of the system, we might have to do a boiled water notice, and that's consistent with the state board, or core requirements in that type of scenario. But obviously we're hoping to avoid that scenario by our preparations. The documents that are shown on the top is a postcard that will be sent to our customers who may experience some of these equipment deployments. And on the bottom is a fact sheet that we have developed for our customers for PSPS and our response and how they should also prepare. Next steps, we'll just continue our community outreach. We will continue talking and coordinating with PG&E and participating in the next round of CPUC rulemaking, phase 2, which will begin in August. And we still have many comments, and look forward to working through the process to make sure our needs are met. Bringing the rental agreement for board consideration today, and if we do obtain that agreement, then we'll begin deploying our portable equipment in mid-July, so that we're prepared as the heart of the fire season comes to us. So that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So the noticing is going to go out just to our customers that are in the tan and orange areas, or are we going to send it out to the entire district?
The postcards would be focused on those areas where we're going to be deploying portable equipment, because it explains why we're deploying equipment. However, the broader message to all our customers will be sent, in general, about the PSPS, the fact sheets, and pointing into our website.
So the postcard is not going to go into the non-2 and 3 tier zones?
If there's
That's
no
a mistake, for a couple of reasons. We're going to have confusion with the public, our constituents, if they're in a tier 1 zone and others are in tiers 2 and 3 and are told to stop irrigating because we're out of water or power for an extended period of time. I don't want to hear what we heard with, they're watering the sidewalks in LA and we're not watering anything up here. I don't want to have people in our district saying, well, how come they get to do things and we can't? It has to be the same message for clarity across the board to all of our customers. So I would rethink that postcard and making sure it goes out to every customer. And I don't know how you're going to address the people who don't pay a water bill in multifamilies either, because we need that. If we don't have a consistent message, we're going to be criticized justifiably at future meetings.
I agree, because we could also have, the power outages can happen throughout the district, right? So, then we'll be in the same situation. We're prioritizing, but that doesn't describe what the worst case scenario is. So I think we need to do it everywhere.
So just one little point of clarification. So the postcards that we're generally talking about, sending out right now, have to do with the placement of the generators in specific neighborhoods, because they will be the first people to kind of see the quote, the impacts. They'll be the ones who have the generators or pumps in their neighborhoods. More broadly speaking, we're talking about putting out next door posts more widely than that. The customer pipeline will go out to all of our customers with all these messages about reducing water usage, discretionary outside usage, and then we're also planning social media, a whole PSPS webpage that will be to all of our customers. So the postcards are really to the folks who are going to be seeing the generators and pumps in the neighborhoods.
Do you have a copy that you can send around so we can, I can, because what.
We can send you copies. Sure.
Provide that to the board.
Okay, just so we can see that it's really directed at. senior
Don't go away, Kelly.
generator.
I'd like to suggest, excuse me, John, you know, there's the apartment buildings where there are no water bills, but nonetheless, there's lobbies. And when our folks are going out reading meters, carrying flyers that they can put into those lobbies would also be beneficial because they're not going to get notice from their landlord.
So we are developing a fact sheet that we're going to have broadly available to, to our field crews, to anyone. And so that will, again, address these main messages, telling them where to go for more information, what their usage should look like. So we can absolutely look at, working with customer service to try to distribute those more widely.
And then there's a resource, excuse me guys, one more resource for you to get the information out for rentals. The Rental Housing Association would be delighted to send stuff out to their own members.
Okay.
And I've got a contact if you would like one.
Yes, that'd be great. Thank you.
But there,
Go ahead.
but there are more than apartments, there are HOAs as well. And we don't receive water bills, so, but you'll deal directly with our HOA, our managers.
Yes, we've been working with some other departments about collecting information on HOAs, so we can probably send our fact sheet to those folks as well.
And how are we looking at reaching out to the media? I mean, the media is going to play a critical role in many languages, talking about where we're putting the pumps potentially, and the message on if we're out of water, if we're out of power for so many days, that means it's basic necessity watering. Do we have a campaign plan for that?
So we're in the process of pulling together a list of media that are, primarily in the hills, in the kind of La Verinda, but Berkeley Hills, Oakland Hills. So we're working on a press release that we're going to send out to all of those media outlets to let them know ahead of time.
So you're not doing a press event, you're doing a press release?
Yes, we had not considered at this point doing an
Well,
event.
I'm not a media expert, but I mean, we do get, when we hold a press conference, we get multimedia and TV and radio, and we start, I just don't, you guys are doing a wonderful job, and I appreciate what you've done and where you're heading, Cliff, Brett, and Kelly, and everybody. We have to plan for the worst, hope for the best. But if it is bad, I really don't want to have to be facing my constituents or other constituents saying, well, I didn't know about it, or I didn't know it was so severe. How come we weren't doing it? Which leads to when Marlene comes up here, as I talked about in the committee, I want us to be banging the table in Sacramento because we're working with PG&E, which is great. However, having said that, we need to be taking a leadership role, I think, as a water, wastewater, energy utility in Sacramento and at the CPUC to make sure that our voice is clearly on the record. We're trying to push the envelope to minimize these disruptions to our constituents and our businesses and everybody else. And I also would like to know, Alex can deal with this later, what is our plan going to be if if the power's down for, let's say, 3 to 5 days? What are our business operations going to be? Are they going to be able to go to work here? Because will the building be adequately powered for air conditioning, elevators? What are we going to be doing along those lines?
Yes, well, as we mentioned earlier in the presentation, most of our facilities that are important have backup power generation, so that'll get us through.
Do we have the power generation, for example, for this building, which is, 9 stories?
No, not for an extended period of time, only for IT.
Okay, so what are we going to do with our employees? Are they told not to report to work, or do they report to remote locations so they can be distributed out doing whatever work they need to do? I mean, I'm going to face this with my company around the corner. We won't have, if the power's out, we'll have no phone, no computer, we won't get up to our office floor. And I'm going to tell people, you can work remotely, that's what you're going to have to do. But don't come into the office, because it'll be a waste of time and effort.
So the district does have a comprehensive emergency operation plan. We have business continuity plans. We've been testing, we've been meetings of the emergency operations team on this subject, so we'd be glad to provide a written report or a presentation.
Presentation would be phenomenal.
All right.
And I would just add to that, and I'm sure you're thinking about this too, that critical health facilities and county public health department, et cetera, to get the word out to, for isolate folks who are, disabled, have medical equipment need, and other, sort of power needs. Not our responsibility to provide them power, but if they have a, ongoing water need, I mean, it's just extra attention to vulnerable populations.
A presentation would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And again, I think you guys are doing a really great job planning this. We're walking into uncharted territory because they said in the meeting this morning, San Diego has a different grid system. It's different than here. And, it could be, there may be no fire in this area or even a threat of a fire, but we could have potentially the electric power turned off for a major chunk, if not our entire service area. And people are not going to understand that. And I'm concerned that not enough people are even aware of it. It's being picked up in the media now, but how many people read the paper, watch the news, pay attention to what's going on?
Well, they think of it as rural, primarily, if they don't think of themselves as living in a wildland interface zone, then they're not thinking about it.
Well, it's, as I said, in the meetings, or at least in Costa County, if your power is off for more than 6 hours, and you own a restaurant, you have to have it recertified by the Department of Health to be able to reopen it. And we're talking huge implications for restaurants, stores, everything else. And I'm getting in the habit, like when I fill my tank up, I used to go to it was nearly full bottom, halfway, time to fill because gas stations won't operate either. And the simple things that people are not thinking about that should not be put at blame, but if somebody wants to blame somebody, we'll be one of the ones who's blamed.
Okay, we have a motion on the
I'll
item.
move the item.
Director Young, President Young, may I make a comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, where's that question?
Thank you.
Sorry, Director Linney and Director Katz, do you have other comments?
Yes, I made a comment in committee which recommended approval of this item, where while many of our neighbors are well buffered from some sites that need to operate continuously, and we do need to operate continuously, we should consider for future years. I think we have a good plan, and I commend staff for working very diligently and expeditiously on a good plan for this year. We should evaluate the feasibility of cleaner burning backup generators and make sure that we're adopting any appropriate filtration technologies so that diesel particulate matter filters are installed where available, and that we explore cleaner burning fuel options going forward. I don't know if that's feasible or available, but I think we have time to plan for next year for sure. So I would encourage that while adopting the plan for this year. I also made a comment that we should consider cost recovery opportunities, whether it's a direct claim to the utility or some kind of action with similarly situated water utilities at the Public Utilities Commission
Okay.
to recover our costs.
Okay, thank you. Ready for a vote? Roll call, Madam Secretary.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Linney,
Aye.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Millen,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
President Young.
Yes. Okay, that moves us off consent calendar. And on to determination and discussion. Item 10, legislative update.
Good afternoon. We have some moving parts and things are still fairly dynamic, so I'm going to try to keep this simple and give you an overview of what's going on and what's before you. Starting with a recap of where we were 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, there was an agreement that had been reached between the big three, the governor, the pro tem, and the speaker, on funding for safe drinking water for disadvantaged communities. And that agreement had two parts. One part was funding that would go in the main budget bill to fund FY20. And that funding was $100 million from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, and $30 million from the state's general fund, and another $3.4 million for state water board admin costs. Those provisions have gone into the main budget bill, which is AB 74, which is right here. You have only a few pages because I thought you wouldn't be interested in wading through all of this or waiting for it to download. The bill has been passed out of the legislature, but it is on the governor's desk. So we have brought it to you today with a support recommendation so that we could at least weigh in with the governor if the board so chooses. The second piece of the agreement is the piece that would go in a budget trailer bill. And this piece is the funding framework for FY21 through FY30. And as it was outlined in the agreement docs, it would provide 5% from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund on an ongoing basis with a cap of $130 million each year. And starting in fiscal year 24, there would be a general fund backfill in case the 5% didn't reach that $130 million. When we last spoke, we were waiting for a trailer bill. And at the time of the ledge report, there was one trailer bill. And that trailer bill is AB 100, which is before you. AB 100 represents the Senate and the administration's approach to laying out this language. And you have this is where it starts getting confusing. You have
Senate or the Assembly?
It's AB 100, but it's the Senate's approach.
Okay.
This is a peculiarity of the budget process, and this is everything's sort of opposite world. So it was, what you have before you is the June 20th version. It was amended again on June 21st. The difference between what you have and the June 21st version is mainly, let me pull up my little table here. The version before you on page 8, going to the top of page 10, is a bunch of justification for using greenhouse gas reduction funds. That language has come out, and it's been replaced with much tighter language in the June 21st version. The other piece that has come out...
Can you read? Is it short?
Yeah, I can. Yes, I'm trying to see if I can see it. This font is very small. Yeah, I will read it. Monies transferred under this paragraph shall be used for the purpose of facilitating the achievement of reductions of greenhouse gas emissions in this state in accordance with the requirements of section 39712, or to improve climate change adaptation and resiliency of disadvantaged communities or low-income households or communities consistent with Division 25.5, commencing with section 38500. For purposes of the monies transferred under this paragraph, a state agency may also comply with the requirements of paragraphs 2 and 3 of subdivision A of section 16428.9 of the Government Code by describing how each proposed expenditure will improve climate change adaptation and resiliency of disadvantaged communities or low-income households or communities. Got all that? All the references?
Yeah, I just tick those off.
Yeah. The other thing that has changed is in the version before you, there was a requirement for the State Water Board to do an expenditure plan, and that's a plan of how they would spend the money ahead of time. That requirement has come out. They do need to do an implementation plan, though. That has stayed in. I will also draw your attention to language that is on page 31. The bill specifically says the act does not impose a levy, charge, or extraction of any kind, such as a tax or fee. So the funding source in the bill is the GGRF appropriation and the general fund appropriation. There is language to allow for money to come from other sources if needed. So that's what's in the ledger report. Let me keep going on where it is. So yesterday, AB 100 was heard before the Senate Budget Committee and approved. And it now goes to the floor. It was not heard on the floor yet. Mr. Monning is on the Senate Budget Committee, as is Senator Skinner and a few others. There was one no vote, which was Senator Wachowski, and he was objecting to the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund expenditure for this purpose. Since the ledger report came out, another bill was introduced, and that is not in your ledger report, and that is SB 101, and that's the Assembly's approach. Again, opposite world because we're in budget time. And we have not had a chance to go into it in depth, but I can tell you that it tracks fairly closely with what is before you from the Senate and the administration. There are a couple of differences. That one was not heard yesterday. We don't know if they plan to bring it up on the floor or not on Thursday. So what's before you is AB 100 with a support recommendation. And if you choose, we can bring SB 101 to you if this is not concluded by the next board meeting for consideration.
I have a question. Thank you, Marlene.
Sure.
Regarding all this, clearly one of the problems with the water quality issues in Central Valley are some of the agencies or entities are way too small. They don't have the capital resources to do what needs to be done in order to provide clean and safe drinking water for their people that they serve. So is there money in there, or is there talk of money going into those impacted areas where you may have a larger agency that could literally take over a small agency that has provided the capital resources in order to upgrade their systems? I know it's politically sensitive, but the fact is, unless an agency has enough funds to upgrade their system, it's going to be an ongoing problem that's not going to be solved.
The quick answer is yes. In AB 100, there's some funding prioritization language. And this is the quickest way for me to find it, but there is language elsewhere in the bill. And President Young, if you have anything to add,
I can't cite it, but it's always been a principle, one of the primary elements of what the funds would be used for, always, since the bill's inception.
So that would, okay, I just want
And the prioritization language is on page 27, I think, if that's your version. Let me see here. This is fun when the parts are moving fairly quickly.
Sure.
Yeah, the prioritization funding language is on the middle of page 27. It starts with small c, and C number 2 is the consolidation, the funding, the fund implementation plan shall prioritize funding for the consolidation or extension of service when feasible, and administrative and managerial contracts or grants entered into.
So is there anything in there talking about LAFCO? Because these would have to go through a LAFCO process to be picked up.
There are other bills that do a lot of the consolidation and how that's going to work mechanically. And the LAFCO issue, I don't believe they speak to it specifically here, but there have been changes in law in the last few years that lay that out, and also lay it out in a way that LAFCO, while they can be involved, they can't be an obstacle to getting the safe drinking water.
Well, I mean, I understand some agencies are not going to want to be absorbed by somebody else. That's the political reality of that. But I would hope, maybe it's not the right hope, I would just think that if they're receiving money to fix their water quality issue, that there's an understanding that some agencies are going to have to disappear and be absorbed into other agencies, and the state probably has the obligation to pay for those capital costs for integrating two agencies into one, so that the financial burden is not placed on the agency who's absorbing the smaller agency. Otherwise, they wouldn't want to take it on. Maybe that's a longer-term approach.
Well, there have been recent changes in law that address that issue and how to protect ratepayers of the subsuming agency. I just don't have it at my fingertips.
Yeah, we actually took a position on a bill like that we had some differences of opinion about, actually.
You and I?
Yeah, you
I can't believe that.
You were against it. You were against the state board's authority for consolidation.
Well, things have changed.
There you go.
So, did I hear right?
No, yeah. Who said that? Doug or Anna?
That was Doug, I think.
The voice of God.
It does have it doesn't sound like it's coming from the speaker. It's very odd.
So the recommendation is a support on these two measures with the offer to bring SB 101 to you if this is still moving in 2 weeks.
I'm going to take the pleasure of the chair, whatever the right term is, prerogative of the chair, and move support on AB 100.
And AB 74.
AB 74 and the 101, should it?
The 101 we would bring back to you.
Yeah.
A second. Oh my God. Don't say anything, Doug.
That might be have fainted in Quebec.
I wish I was there to see that.
Okay, we've come a long way. Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Director Coleman,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Linney,
Aye.
Director McIntosh,
Yes.
Director Millen,
Yes.
Director Patterson,
Yes.
President Young.
Yes.
And can I ask you, Marlene, about the issue on how forceful we're going to be, or what's being talked about in relation to the PSPS or SPS, whatever it is, the PG ratio? PSPS.
That's the term today. Okay, so the fire discussion is going to be ramping up. I didn't say heating up, it's going to be ramping up once we're done with the budget. The budget has been all day, every day for the last month or so. The 901 Commission issued their report a couple weeks ago. The pro tem and the governor and the speaker all issued a statement regarding that report, and the committee hearings are starting on that issue. They want to have some action in the next few months. Right now, what they're focused on is a catastrophic fund and liability, probably a fund approach, and trying to figure out what that looks like for the IOUs. That's the big topic that's in front of them right now. As this rolls, and particularly as the summer wears on and the heat gets higher, we expect to see some of the other topics come in. And we have already been messaging on this particular issue, and now that we have some great outreach materials and some specifics, I'll be going around and talking to folks about it so that if we come in and say, hey, we really need some attention here, the groundwork is laid.
So is there a member of our delegation who has taken a lead effort
Yes.
in any of this?
Yeah, Senator Dodd is the individual that shared. Yeah, he has a corner of our service area, and we have a good relationship with the office.
Must be Crockett.
And I think it is.
He is part of Martinez.
So he chaired the conference committee last year, and he is taking the lead this year. And so that is an office that we're staying close to. But we're also making sure our entire delegation knows what's going on. And so we do at least have that relationship in place.
I just, again, you heard what I said. I wasn't trying to rant, because again, Cliff and Brett have done a very good job on this. I just want to make sure in the event it is not, in the event it ends up being what we hope it isn't, I want us as an organization, East Bay Metro, made a very strong stand in the legislature, at the CPUC, so we can, without doubt or hesitation, say we did everything we could to try and minimize the impacts, versus saying, oh, we're having to react to the impacts.
Okay,
Understood?
anything else?
Good.
Okay, we'll
Thank
look
you.
forward to 2 weeks from now.
All right.
Okay,
Oh, Marlene, I'm sorry. By then, there should be a list of those who support and or oppose.
Actually, no. Again, this is a peculiarity of the budget process. They don't go through regular policy committees, and so we are at the point where they're not doing analyses. They go through. I will tell you that yesterday, when AB 100 was heard, they did have some folks come up, support opposition. There was no opposition. The support was the water community, the agricultural community. I did check in with some of the EJ folks and heard back that they thought they might support, but they weren't sure. They hadn't had a chance to look at it. And I've not gotten confirmation from them on where they are on the measures at this point.
Okay, you'll keep us posted.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
okay. Sorry. Okay, item 11, we do have a speaker card. Sonia, do you want to speak before the item or after the presentation or?
Maybe after presentation.
After?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have a staff presentation on this item to approve a resolution supporting the district's participation in the voluntary agreement negotiation process. Jose Seca, our manager of Fisheries and Wildlife, will provide the update.
Good afternoon, President Young, directors, and our directors abroad. This afternoon, I'm just going to give a brief presentation on the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan update, talk a little bit about the voluntary agreements, and kind of link that to the resolution that's before you. So in this overview, I'm going to provide just a quick update or highlights of our fisheries program and the results, discuss the Bay Delta Water Quality Control Plan update process, discuss the state board staff approach at looking at unimpaired flow, discuss the voluntary agreements, how they've morphed into a statewide process, and then finally kind of link that to the resolution before you. So I've been before you many times talking about the successes of our fisheries program. Just briefly in those 4 points, number one, the JSA has been tremendously successful in terms of improving returns to the Mokelumne River. Right now we're averaging nearly 10,000 fish a year since the JSA was implemented. We've essentially achieved the CDPIA doubling goal for the Mokelumne River. Our contribution to ocean fisheries, which is the green part of the pie charts up there, is just, it's phenomenal, and it goes well above what you would expect from a tributary our size. And then finally, since the implementation of the JSA about 20 years ago, we spent approximately $70 million in implementing that agreement. And that goes from research programs, the hatchery upgrade, paying for the tagging, the habitat improvements. So there's a lot that goes into that $70 million. So, and that's kind of the basis that we take off from to look at any sort of a new proposal or a new agreement. It's got to be able to build upon this and not detract from it. So the Water Quality Control Plan update, the process began back in March of 2009. There's 4 different phases. The San Joaquin objectives, which were adopted in December of 2018. Phase 2 is the Sacramento Basin objectives, of which the Mokelumne River is considered part of that Phase 2 process. The third phase is basically an implementation process through a proceeding at the state board. And finally, the Phase 4 is flow objectives for other tributaries that weren't necessarily included in those other first 2 phases.
So
Go
what would
ahead.
that include? What, for instance, what would that include?
Which?
Which tribes would it include?
Trinity,
So one you don't
Puda
include
jumped in here at the last minute. So for instance, Puda Creek,
Okay.
essentially was not
Cache
involved in
Creek.
the beginning. Cache Creek.
Okay.
Some of these smaller tribs that don't have a lot of water at this point, but ultimately should be folded into any sort of
Okay.
agreement. So the state board solution centers around an unimpaired flow standard for each of the tribs to provide inflow into the delta. But also, as part of that, there's also a voluntary agreement mechanism that will allow for folks to come up with these voluntary agreements that would meet the desired outcomes of the state board. Mokelumne stakeholders have been involved in negotiating a voluntary agreement for the Mokelumne specifically for over 2 years with DFW, with Natural Resources Agency. And that agreement includes both flow and non-flow issues. And the other point to highlight is that these agreements, as of right now anyway, are scheduled to be 15-year agreements, so there's no discussions of that going beyond the 15 years. The state board unimpaired flow alternative results in a number of potential impacts in the Mokelumne that involve both the fisheries, operations, and water supply reliability. And how they do that, there's a risk to, there's a reduction to carryover storage at Comanche Dam Reservoir that happens because of this. There's an increased risk to cold water pool because of that reduced carryover storage. It doubles the number of years that EBMUD customer rationing exceeds 15%. It reduces deliveries to other users downstream of Comanche Dam on the lower river. And it also increases the district's reliance on CVP supplies, going from 18 years to 39 years over a 95-year period of modeling. So, and I think one of the best ways to illustrate that, and this is just one example, when we talk about the risk to temperature and the carryover storage. If you look on this graphic here, that purple horizontal line going around or going across is the 150,000 acre-foot storage mark for Comanche Reservoir. Once the reservoir goes below that, there's an increased risk of having a reduction of the cold water pool below the 28,000 acre-foot mark, which is what's within the JSA, up to complete elimination of that cold water pool, depending on how far it goes down. Under baseline conditions, currently what we're operating at now, there's an annual risk of about 12%. So each year there's about 12% risk that we're going to hit that point or below. Under the unimpaired flow ranges that have been proposed by the state board that go from 35% up to 55%, you can see that that risk annually goes up to 50% or greater, that we would fall below that 150,000 acre-foot mark at Comanche. And that's where when we talk about cold water pool risk, that's it right there. And that's the cold water that we absolutely rely on for the fall run to maintain conditions during the spawning period.
How did the regulatory agencies react to that?
We've had numerous meetings over the last 2.5 years. I would say that the reaction has been to ask for more analysis, to kind of break apart this graphic and really understand how we come to this conclusion. So, and we're working with them on that. We've also had that same discussion with the NGOs, certain NGOs, and we're working with them on that particular aspect for them to understand, because it's not just about Comanche, obviously, there's the Part E reservoir, and that plays into the operation. So their request is to kind of break this apart more and look at the very specific items that go into this type of analysis.
Not linking the two reservoirs together, is what you're saying?
Understanding how in Comanche Reservoir, how Part E feeds into that to get to these numbers here. So for the Mokelumne proposal, it includes both flow and non-flow measures. It includes approximately $60 million over 15 years. That breaks out to about $40 million of district money, and then the remainder would come from stakeholders along the river and the state to fund. The measures are designed to improve juvenile habitat and habitat availability. It builds upon gains achieved in the JSA, and that's the important component. We're adding a little bit more that we think is going to provide that increased benefit without starting to go down that backside of that curve. And it also protects water quality and supply for customers in the environment. So just a quick example here of the flow measures. These are additional amounts above the JSA, and they're highlighted there in the green on that bar graph. And they're additional amounts of normal and above, below normal in dry years. They're designed to be spring releases to provide water for habitat and out-migration for juveniles. And they're going to inundate the floodplains that are going to be built as part of this, this proposal. It includes fall releases for attraction pulses, as we've been doing now for the last 10 years. And it also includes key off-ramps to protect water supply and water quality. Again, primarily temperature, and looking at that end of summer storage at Comanche. On the non-flow measures, the items on there are designed to improve juvenile habitat, to improve the migration habitat and the hatchery practices, continue on with our gravel enhancement and include new spawning areas, and also enhance our research and monitoring program in the river. In about fall of 2018, the state DFW shifted from working individually with tributaries and trying to go for a more collaborative approach, working with all the tribs at one time. And this is what's been referred to as either the valley-wide proposal or the statewide proposal in terms of a voluntary agreement. There's about 50 entities working on the agreement, and EBMUD is one of those entities. There's multiple work teams that have been initiated for this process. Governance and science, policy, a plenary session, and also a legal team. From those, there's a number of other subgroups. There's about 15 to 20 hours worth of meetings every week on this particular process. We're getting there. It's hard, but we're getting there with our staff, kind of spreading ourselves around. Because I think it's important for our stakeholders to be at that table to ensure that we have good representation there for this process. There are environmental groups that are at that table, and there are also environmental groups that are not at the table that are in opposition to this voluntary agreement process, particularly at the state level. And we've engaged with those groups throughout this process to at least get them familiar with our proposal and what we're trying to achieve. But at the end of
those groups, you mean both those?
Both, absolutely both. Yes. And the ultimate goal of this valley-wide proposal is to identify the adequacy of this voluntary agreement compared to the state board staff proposal of unimpaired flow. That's ultimately what we're trying to do as part of this process. And if we were to have to do it individually, it would be the same thing. Is how our proposal matches up with theirs to provide the benefits that we're looking for. So in this resolution, what we're asking is to continue to support our participation in the voluntary agreement process. It also highlights the successes of our 1998 joint settlement agreement. It upholds our commitment to environmental stewardship of both the Mokelumne River and the Bay Delta. And it also advocates for assurances in equity for the flow and non-flow contributions. We want to make sure that we aren't giving more than we should be giving, both in terms of water and in terms of commitments and dollars to building habitat. And likewise, we want to make sure that we're getting a fair share of any money that might be out there to support these habitat measures or to provide compensation for additional flows in the river. And with that, that's a brief update. If there's any questions.
Quick question. Why has there been no discussion by any of the parties with only a 15-year agreement? It's a lot of money that's going to be spent. And in 15 years, the agreement's either going to be re-ratified or changed or eliminated. Not eliminated, but it'll be changed or kept the same.
I don't think there's anybody at the table that thinks that in the 15 years, any flow requirements that are part of this agreement are going to go away,
No,
particularly if it's going to be successful. The money obviously is going to be staged in terms of how it goes in. And a lot of this money that's going to go in, it's dependent on the projects being able to be built. In the case of the Mokelumne, one of our issues is we don't own land. Well, we own very little land below Comanche Dam. So it's going to have to rely on some process either to find willing landowners or have the state help us find willing landowners that are willing to cooperate and engage in a restoration type project.
Any other questions?
I would move the resolution.
Well, we have, when,
We have a speaker.
we have a speaker if we want to, I mean, we could take, we could do the motion in a second, but let's hear from Sonia Dearmeyer from the Sierra Club. We haven't seen you in a long time, Sonia. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Good afternoon, everyone, board members and President Young and staff members. I'm Sonia Dearmeyer. I'm speaking for Sierra Club in regards to this resolution. The club obviously lauds East Bay MUD's efforts over decades and decades to emphasize conservation and ensure that despite population growth in its service area, there's been a reduction in the total amount of water used, and that you're increasing your recycling and everything, your efforts. We also really applaud your concrete, notable results in the Mokelumne fisheries, which, and including in-river natural spawners, and that you've really reached the doubling goals, doing far better in the Mokelumne than any other tributary rivers up and down the Central Valley, due to your significant investments in all of those areas. Also, we really, applaud that you have put in this long-term effort to create a partnership with other diverters on the Mokelumne and with public stakeholders, and through the JSA, you have achieved, increases in flows. That's all really good. But we do want to remind you that the 2017 scientific basis report from the State Water Board said that really 75% of unimpaired flows would really be necessary to be protective of the ecosystem systems, on all the tributaries. And the framework for phase 2 really sets 45% as the bottom end of what could potentially work, and a range between 45% and 65% of unimpaired flows as being really the working range for what we would like to see happening in the Mokelumne River, starting at 55%. So the Mokelumne VSA has, adequate flows, or basically provides about the 45% of unimpaired flows in all months, in the months that are of above average and normal water years, above normal and normal water years. So just gets to that 45% in all those spring months. But the VSA, as it's proposed, misses the 45% targets in multiple spring months in all other types of water years. So we really urge you to continue to work on making sure that water that you contribute goes through the delta, reaches the bay, that all other tributaries are also contributing their fair share, and that biological goals are precisely determined so that your outcomes can be compared to other tributaries' outcomes. But we do urge you to really increase the overall flow amounts that you're willing to.
So you got to wrap up your.
Okay. That you're willing to provide on Mokelumne. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sonia. Go ahead with the motion and then have discussion. John, who moved? Lisa moved. Bill, second.
Okay.
Is that right? And I, I am so impressed by what we have been able to do in terms of I think about what this process is about. This process is about recovering our fisheries and recovering our ecosystems. And for those agencies that are shorting the environment, something simple like unimpaired flows makes a hell of a lot of sense. Because at least more water should equal more fish. What we've learned is that it's not just about more. It's about when and how and what you do. And I think we've figured it out. I wish that every agency was doing what we do, and we'd see dramatic changes in the health of the Bay and the Delta. And starving the ecosystem of water is definitely one of the major problems. I think, we are, I get it. I think, most of those agencies are going to have to cough up a lot of water. I hope that we are able to help them and the state and others benefit from our learning and support. So that's why I'm strongly in support of this resolution. And if we haven't had, I'd like to make sure that Sonia and other folks from the club and the stakeholders who are not kind of in the process, because Sierra Club isn't participating, is that right? Really do get briefs. I don't know if we've done, Mike, if we've done. Okay.
But we're due for another.
Yeah, it's really helping to understand that is important. I actually wholeheartedly support that we're doing this resolution, and I hope we can. I think if we have to take an exit ramp and get our own DSA that we, and the others aren't following behind us, we're going to have to do that as well. But if we can help others follow our example, then I think that's a good thing. John?
I'm in support of it. I mean, I've raised questions on some of the issues in the past regarding this, but I do think we have a moral and legal obligation to protect the resources on the river and to fix some of the things that we did many years ago. We've done that through the GSA. And actually, by our virtue of what we achieved through the GSA with the last drought at the State Water Board, we were given a little bit of leeway as a result of what we could and could not do. And because we were able to demonstrate, quantify returns, and we're 2.5% of the flow to the Delta, but 43% of the salmon return for the ocean. It's like, good God, we've got it. And yes, I wish other entities were doing the same thing. I support it. I have some concerns, but I think it's the right thing to do. And I'm proud that this agency is stepping up to the plate to do just that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I wanted just to say I agree with John, but the most compelling thing as we go forward is this resolution are the findings, because the findings highlight the work that this staff and this agency has done, and it shows leadership that all the rivers of California should follow.
Director Katz or Director Lenny, any comments?
Comments that have
behind. That's what's
been well stated.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
nothing to add. I agree. I heard a lot of good comments there, but I agree with it.
Okay. I think we are ready for a vote.
Director Coleman?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lenny?
Aye.
Director McIntosh?
Yes.
Director Millen?
Yes.
Director Patterson?
Yes.
President Young?
Yes. Okay. We are on item 12, the general manager's report.
Staff would like to provide a brief presentation on the improved water outage information that's going to be provided on our website, and Hillary Anderson's going to provide that presentation.
Hillary, I'm frozen, so can you
You're
say
frozen?
anything? Yes.
There we go. All right, good afternoon, Board President Young, Board of Directors Near Far, General Manager. My name is Hillary Anderson, and I work in the Operations and Maintenance Department, and I'm going to give you a brief overview and demonstration of our new water outage map that we will be launching on the internet. So back in July 2013, we began posting information about significant water outages on our website. Significant outages were those that met one or more criteria that we had established, things like more than 50 customers were impacted, extensive property damage, things like that. The information appeared in plain text on the site in a table-like format, no map. This is an example of some alerts that were posted last August. We mentioned the location information, some street information, traffic impacts. We don't discuss the breadth of the outage, like the number of customers impacted, and you're going to see that in the new map. So historically, for these significant outages, we posted about 3 to 4 outages each month. In response to the 2018 strategic plan that states we will improve our customer outage notification tools, tomorrow we will launch a new map that shows water outages that result from all of our unplanned maintenance, regardless of the significance. So whether it's one customer who's out of water, 100, whether there's property damage or not, if there's someone out of water for an unplanned reason, they're going to appear on the map. The information will include, again, the street impacts, streets that are impacted, a little more information about the building numbers on that street, specifically the number of customer services that are being affected by the outage. Again, still the traffic impacts, if any, and the estimated day of week, date, and time when the water will be restored. Based on historical data, we estimate we'll be posting about 70 outages per month on our website. And the map is scheduled to go live tomorrow, usually in the afternoon. So again, this map is presenting unplanned water outages. It will not include planned outages. When we have a planned outage to our customers, they're notified in advance via mailings or door hangers. So they're not included on this map at this time. So this is an example of the water outage map. The map will include normal navigation tools that people are used to using. Zoom in, zoom out. They can enter an address to navigate to a specific location. The outages will appear as an orange triangle, and if the user clicks on them, they'll see, again, more specific information stating that due to emergency repairs, water service is disrupted for a certain number of customers. So this one says 33 customers. If there's traffic impacts, they would be listed. We might, in the comments, discuss the specific buildings that I mentioned. So this one says impacted customers include 1361 Fascination Circle to 1396 Fascination Circle. So we're
Question on that.
okay.
I think this is good, but I'm sure legal's looked at it. Are we opening ourselves up? Oh, okay. Have we looked at from a standpoint of legal liability when we have outages occurring? Are we opening a door up for claims, one? What about privacy issues? We start listing the addresses of customers in terms of having their address posted, and then the potential liability. Let's say we have an extended outage and we list 33 addresses, and people may be gone because there's no water at their house. Does that increase the chance, if we're talking to the sheriff or cops, about somebody saying, oh, these people are probably not around, they don't have water, so it's a place to rob? I mean, have we looked at some of those issues?
I haven't been involved with any legal discussions yet.
So I would say it's more likely than not that we would not face any claims just by reason of a water service outage. I think we have immunity for that, no liability attaches.
Okay.
On the question about personally identifiable information. I'll look into that. I believe that more than an address would be necessary in order to constitute PII, but certainly it's a question that we'll look into.
I think this is a great tool for people to have, but my first thought was we listed an address here on that slide. It's like, oh, you know, somebody goes, that's a neighborhood where if I had ulterior motives, maybe I want to go in and do something. That's, you know.
That's John's mind.
It's my mind. Well, hey, maybe it is wrong.
It didn't even occur to me.
Well, you know, I guess I'm listening to all the BART reports, sorry, Mark, that have been in the media recently, and how, you know, the different things, one thing they do has an impact someplace else. And that's what was my first thought.
Okay. This is the first phase of a multi-phased project. The map is just the first phase, so the future phases, the plans include putting all of the outages, so both the planned and unplanned outages on the map. Pushing some traffic information to other traffic applications that could receive it, like Waze, and then notifying customers who have told us that they want to be notified via phone, email, or text that they are impacted by the outage.
And how are they notifying us? Do we have something that we set up for people to say, alert me if?
We don't have that set up yet, so that's what we have to wait for. But the tool that we use to create this information will have the list of customers, and so we could feed it into that type of a system. Okay, when I came down here.
Thing too, actually.
See?
No, I did. I didn't know what I thought. I didn't think about it enough to say something, but I did.
I'm launching into this map.
I know, it's scary.
This page isn't in production or on our website yet, but it is using production data. So when I came down here, okay, good. We have an outage. I know that's bad to say, yay, we have an outage, but otherwise you'd be looking at a blank map. So this is real live data.
That's where Marguerite lives.
And you can see I can click on the, okay. There we go. I can click on it. I'm steady. And I can zoom to it. And you see we've got an outage on Brighton Avenue in Albany that's scheduled to be resolved by 4:30 p.m. today.
I think what's here in terms of address information is adequate. So it doesn't have the
Keeping it a little bit more generic.
Like what we get for our daily outages report, it just gives street intersections. It doesn't give you the numbers.
Oh, and your main break alerts, but
Yeah.
that one, yeah. Mm-hmm. Good suggestion. Okay, that's all I have for you. Any questions?
Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. And also at your places, board members, we have the updated Speakers Bureau with upcoming outreach events. That's all I have.
Okay. Planning committee minutes are included in the packet. And John, do you have a
Sure, I'll give a really
report
quick
from
finance meeting we had. Directors Katz, Patterson, and myself attended. Items 1 and 3 were actually approved today on the agenda. Item 2 is just an annual update on the employees' retirement system. Shows that we're improving. So it was a good report.
Okay. Item 14, other items for future consideration, please. I think we have a pending presentation on emergency response that was discussed, and the legislative item that Marlene raised for next time. Item 15, director comments. Anybody farther afield have any director comments? No. Okay. With that, we will adjourn to the next regular meeting of the Board of Directors, which will be held at 1:15 p.m. on Tuesday, July 9th, right here, 375 11th Street. Thank you.
Happy 4th of July, everyone.
Yes.